My leadership journey started in a place where you really, really don't want to get it wrong. It was on the deck of an aircraft carrier. And let me tell you, the lesson I learned out there, well, let's just say it came with a side of jet fuel and some really interesting characters. And we're going to dive into that today on Engage and Inspire. Hey there, and welcome to Engage and Inspire. I'm Scott Liles, and I have to confess something right up front. I am a total leadership geek. It's my thing. I read the books, I write the notes, and I get way too excited about a really good team meeting. But I wasn't always like this. Now, this episode is going to be a little different. This episode is going to be more off the cuff. It's going to be more ad-libbed and more about me and who I am and why you should trust what I'm saying is coming from a place of experience, trials, errors, research. And I want you to know that what I put out on my podcast and online on my TikToks is real effective advice. So I'm just a kid out of Texas. I joined the Navy and I went to boot camp in Chicago. You know, I was intense. I graduated top of my grad group. I was the guy that was probably annoying everyone else because I made my rack a little too perfect. I was all about that personal achievement, you know? So that drive landed me on the deck of the USS Nimitz with VFA 41 for 2 deployments during the OIF and OEF campaigns. And it's the flight deck is a world of constant pressure. It is a ballet of controlled chaos. It is communicating with hand signals and a sea of different colored jerseys, and every single one of them has their own job to do. And you see every kind of boss out there. You've got the shouters, you've got the stone-faced silent types, the ones who are more bureaucratic. It's like a living catalog of management styles, and not all of them are great. And I remember on my second tour, I met face-to-face, I met my CO. At the time, he was Commander Osterhout, and now he's a retired captain. He was different. This man's discipline was absolutely there. You didn't mess up around him. But he was also just a good human being. He knew every one of our names. He would ask about our families. He would ask about our lives. He would have a genuine conversation with you. And I'll never forget this moment when we were deployed and things were hectic, and I get the news that, you know, maybe my wife at the time was going to be departing our relationship. You know, and I obviously, being on the flight deck and in a dangerous environment, you start to wander. Your mind goes in different places. You're in your job paying attention, then you're gone, and then you're in your job paying attention, and then you're gone. And our CO pulls me off the flight deck. Now in my head, I'm bracing for impact. I'm thinking, okay, he's going to tell me to suck it up and focus on the mission. That's what a lot of leaders would do, right? But not him. He takes me into his stateroom. He shuts the door and looks at me and says, "All right, talk to me." Just a real human conversation. No rank, just true human concern in the middle of a combat deployment. And at that moment, right there, that changed everything for me. It showed me that the strongest leaders aren't afraid of the human stuff. They don't see it as a distraction. They see it as the job. He engaged with me. He didn't engage with the petty officer who had a job to do. He engaged with me. And I would have followed that man anywhere after that. I mean, that was a true sign of effective leadership. Now, switching gears, I get out of the Navy sometime later, and it's time for my first big boy job, right? So I get an office job, khakis, button down, the whole 9 yards. I was ready to be a professional. And let me tell you, my first civilian boss, his leadership philosophy was basically public humiliation. His idea of feedback was to make you feel about 2 inches tall in front of everyone. I lasted there about as long as a snow cone in the Texas summer. It was the absolute opposite of everything Commander Osterhout stood for. So let's just say that my goodbye from that job wasn't exactly tearful. So I bail on the office life and I make a hard left and pivot into field service. I'm in a van, hands-on, solving problems out in the real world, and it was a relief. I found a new gig with a great leader. He's mentoring me, talking about promoting me, seeing my potential, and I'm thinking, all right, this is it. The spark's back. So I pack up everything, and my wife and I moved to Seattle, and we're up there, and I'm diving into everything in the office head first, and I'm trying to make a name for myself. And then I hear about a job opening, and before I get a chance to apply, they hire someone from outside for this management position. And here's the real kicker. I end up training this man. I'm literally teaching this guy how to be my boss. It was the weirdest and most demoralizing experience I've ever felt. I felt like I was building my own replacement, but he was also my manager. And my brain still hurts thinking about it. And at that moment, the spark for leadership and the joy that I felt for wanting to be that positive, effective leader, it fled. It was gone. And that's when I decided just to get back in the field. So shifted again back into field service, and also with a new company. And that's where I finally met the guy who changed the game for me, a gentleman by the name of Robert Ingram. Now, this guy was amazing. He was a great mentor for me. One of the things that I remember him saying when I first got promoted into a supervisor position is, and you've heard it in a previous episode, he said that your job as a leader is to find what is keeping your team from being effective and successful, remove that, take it on yourself, so that way your team can continue to be effective and successful. And Rob, if you're listening, no offense, but it was so stupidly simple. and yet it absolutely blew my mind. He saw something in me that I had given up on. He handed me the keys and said, "You can drive this thing." Now, because of this and because of him, I decided to go to school. So I ended up getting a bachelor's in business management, and I held on to that for maybe 6 months and decided to, you know what, it's time for me to want to do more. So I ended up enrolling in a dual master's program. I have an MBA and I also have a master's in leadership. And then I became a book nerd. I started digesting everything that I could. I read articles, I read studies, I read books from Simon Sinek, self-help books like The High Five Habit from Mel Robbins. I mean, I was consuming knowledge left and right. And if you name it, I've probably got it on my bookshelf here in my office with sticky notes hanging out of it and scribbles in the margins and highlighted paragraphs. And so I started carrying this notebook with me, almost like I was some kind of leadership detective. You know, I'd read a concept and then watch people. And I would think, okay, what happened in that meeting when my boss started with a complaint? I was obsessed with connecting the theory to the real life action. What did the leader do that made people lean in? Or what did they do that made them check out? And all of that, the great CO, the terrible boss, the mischance, the amazing mentor, the whole library that I have of scribbled on books, it all melted together into this personal blueprint for me. I finally found my own operating system. So what did I do? I took this theory and put it to test. So I had a leader at a company that here recently that let me put this theory into practice. And we conducted a survey and saw the real proof. We saw the real change. The teams got better. People were happier. The work improved. It was literal proof. And I wrote a paper on it. And it hasn't been published. It's my own personal paper that I use for my guide. And it's my whole leadership style wrapped up in 36 pages. And it was at that moment that I realized that this is something that I need to do. This is my calling. And I started the HELM Leadership Group. And that's the big why for this podcast, honestly. I've been in the trenches. I know what it's like to have a boss that makes you dread Sunday nights. Laying there in bed thinking, oh my gosh, I got to do this again. I got to get up and I got to suffer another 40, 48, 50 hours with this person. I know what it's like to have a leader who makes you feel seen and who makes you want to be better. And I think bad leadership is a quiet crisis. You know, it drains people. It kills good ideas. It makes work suck. And I think so many people who have that instinct to lead, that instinct to help, to clear the path for others, they hold back. They think, I'm not the loudest person in the room, or I don't like conflict. I care too much. That's probably a sign of weakness. I'm here to tell you that's your superpower. That instinct to lead with compassion, that's the good stuff. That's the stuff that actually works. And this show is for the person stuck in a toxic job, needing to hear that it's not them. And it's for the person with that quiet tug to step up who needs the playbook and the permission to do it their way. So the framework I built is called HELM. And much like the military, I love acronyms. You can use them for so many different things. But what HELM stands for is humble, empathetic, loyal, mission driven. It's just a fancy way of codifying what my best leaders already knew. So if any of this resonates with you, if you've ever had a terrible boss or you're nervous about becoming one, you're in the right place. Stick with me. I'm going to lay it out for you piece by piece, episode by episode. Next week, we're going to get into humility and why saying I don't know might be the most powerful thing you ever say as a leader. But for now, just think about the best leader you've ever had. What was it about that leader that made you trust them? What was it about that leader that made you feel seen or heard or understood that your ideas matter, your concerns matter, you matter? And I'd love to hear about it. Shoot me a message on LinkedIn. Follow me on TikTok. You can find us anywhere you get your podcasts. Leave a comment, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. But for now, thanks for hanging out with me. If this helps, pass it along. And remember, until next time, keep engaging and keep inspiring. Take care.